The belief that you can achieve political victory from 30,000 feet is the single most persistent illusion in modern warfare. Why does this promise of a clean, decisive victory from the sky keep seducing the world's most powerful militaries into repeating the same mistakes? March 19, 2003. Shock and awe promised to end a war in days. 864,000 tons of bombs in Vietnam promised the same. Both failed catastrophically. Yet today, the same seductive myth has resurfaced. This dangerous illusion persists because it offers something irresistible: war without cost. 1,991 CNN cameras captured smart bombs threading through Baghdad windows. The images were intoxicating. War as surgery, not butchery, no mud, no body bags, no brutal, grinding calculus of ground combat. Just speed, precision, technological dominance. The concept of a decapitation strike seems perfectly logical on a whiteboard. You identify the critical node. You eliminate it. The entire system collapses. It's clean. An engineer's solution to a political problem. This is the dream that has driven Airpower doctrine for a century. Bypass the enemy's army entirely and attack their will to fight directly. Break their infrastructure, their economy, their leadership, and they will simply surrender. This appealing vision is a dangerous mirage. It systematically mistakes military capability for political outcome and physical destruction for the collapse of a nation's will. The first time we learned this lesson on a global scale was in the skies over Vietnam. If Airpower could truly break a nation's will, Vietnam should have been the ultimate proof. The scale defies comprehension. 1965 to 1968. 864,000 tons of bombs on North Vietnam. More tonnage than the entire Pacific Theater in World War II. They started with surgical strikes on military targets, then infrastructure, then civilian factories. Each bomb was calculated to send a message: stop supporting the South or face escalation. American leadership believed in rational, numbers-driven warfare. There was a crossover point, a threshold of pain beyond which no rational actor would continue to fight. The math broke down completely. They weren't fighting a spreadsheet. North Vietnam was a decentralized agrarian society with a revolutionary ideology. They didn't have massive factories to destroy. Their supply lines were hidden jungle trails. Their will was not located in a building that could be bombed. Every bomb that fell became proof of American aggression. It was a recruiting tool. The American war planners had created a feedback loop of delusion. Each failed bombing campaign demanded a bigger one. Each bigger campaign promised to be the last. The bombing didn't break their will. It forged it into steel. It wasn't just a clash of technology. It was a clash of philosophies. The American air campaign was an engineering solution applied to an ideological problem. The lesson from Rolling Thunder wasn't just tactical, it was existential. Misread your enemy's will, and you don't just lose battles, you lose wars. A lesson that would be forgotten just 12 years later when a new, high-tech doctrine promised to finally get it right. By 1991, that new doctrine had emerged. Shock and awe. The Gulf War was supposed to be the showcase, the clean, decisive high-tech war that Vietnam was not. 42 days. Over 100,000 sorties. Iraqi command and control, air defenses, and infrastructure systematically destroyed. The goal was psychological collapse so total that their will to fight would evaporate before the ground war even began. On the surface, it worked. The Iraqi army was crippled. Kuwait was liberated in 100 hours. It looked like the ultimate validation of Airpower. But here is the crucial distinction that everyone missed. The air campaign shattered the Iraqi military, but it never came close to collapsing the regime. Saddam Hussein and his inner circle were not decapitated. The Ba'athist party structure, the secret police, the instruments of state control, they were damaged, but they endured. We mistook the destruction of an army for the destruction of a political system. We saw soldiers surrendering in the desert and assumed the will of the state itself had broken. The 1991 air campaign was a tactical masterclass, but a strategic illusion. It proved Airpower could dismantle an army with terrifying efficiency. It also proved it could not, by itself, dismantle the political will of an entrenched regime. This illusion would cost America a decade of occupation and thousands more lives. A decade later, we would have to go back to finish the job. What you're seeing is a pattern, a historical echo. If you want to understand why these strategic myths persist, despite the staggering evidence, consider subscribing. We dissect the systems and philosophies behind the headlines, not just the events themselves. But skeptics will always point to NATO's bombing of Serbia in 1999 as the exception that proves the rule. 78 days of bombing forced Slobodan Milosevic to withdraw from Kosovo. For 78 days, cruise missiles slammed into government buildings in Belgrade. Graphite bombs shorted out power grids, plunging entire cities into darkness. This was Operation Allied Force, and it inflicted real pain. But to say the bombs alone produced victory ignores everything happening on the ground and behind closed doors. The simple narrative ignores three critical factors. First, the quiet but credible mobilization for a NATO ground invasion. Second, intense diplomatic pressure. Russia, Serbia's traditional ally, had flipped, telling Milosevic he was on his own. Third, years of crippling economic sanctions that had hollowed out the Serbian economy. Milosevic wasn't counting bombs falling from the sky. He was counting allies abandoning him on the ground. His decision to withdraw was a cold, political calculation to preserve his regime from total annihilation, not a sudden, emotional collapse of will caused by airstrikes. Milosevic's capitulation was not a surrender to Airpower. It was a desperate political retreat from a multifaceted, inescapable checkmate. The bombs were a powerful lever in a much larger machine, but they were never the entire engine of collapse. Believing they were is a fatal simplification, one that planners would make just 4 years later, with catastrophic results. This flawed belief in Airpower's precision reached its zenith in 2003. The strategy wasn't just to weaken the regime, but to surgically remove it, piece by piece. The deck of cards became a symbol of this new targeted approach. The goal was explicit: regime change through decapitation. Remove Saddam and his 54 top lieutenants, and the tyrannical structure would collapse. A grateful Iraqi population would embrace democracy. The initial air campaign and invasion were a stunning military success. Baghdad fell in weeks. Then something happened that the war planners seemed utterly unprepared for. The state itself dissolved. A regime is not just a collection of individuals on a deck of cards. It's a network. It's institutions. It's the secret police, the party loyalists, the tribal allegiances. It's the complex, ugly machinery that holds a society together, even through brutality. By removing the head, but leaving the nervous system to twitch and fire randomly, the U.S. didn't create a stable democracy. It created a power vacuum. Into that vacuum flooded chaos, insurgency, sectarian violence, and eventually, groups far more fanatical than the secular evil they had replaced. Decapitation strikes don't guarantee collapse. They often guarantee chaos. Instead of a clean victory, you get an insurgency that bleeds you dry for a decade. Airpower had successfully erased the leadership. It had no answer for what came next. You cannot bomb a new political reality into existence. And that brings us to today. With renewed tensions in the Middle East, the same old arguments are back. Pundits and politicians are again whispering about surgical strikes against Iran. This time they say it's different. Stealth fighters, cyber warfare, unparalleled precision can finally deliver the knockout blow. The logic is seductive. Target the nuclear facilities. Hit the IRGC command centers. Cripple their oil refineries. Unleash cyber attacks to paralyze their grid. This combination of physical and digital shock will force the regime to the negotiating table or cause it to implode. But this thinking ignores the fundamental nature of the Iranian regime. It is not a fragile, top-down dictatorship. It's a complex, resilient system with deep ideological roots, a layered power structure, and decades of experience withstanding immense external pressure. Its nuclear program is buried deep underground. Its power is distributed across multiple, sometimes competing, factions. More importantly, a foreign attack is the single greatest gift you could give to the hardliners in Tehran. The hardliners would be handed their greatest propaganda victory on a silver platter. It would instantly unify a fractured population against a common enemy. It would be a rally-the-flag moment that silences internal dissent and justifies further repression. Modern technology has magnified our ability to destroy things. It has not changed our inability to control the political consequences of that destruction. Applying this logic to Iran is still trying to solve a complex political and societal problem with a technological tool. It is a recipe for escalation, not resolution. Why does this myth persist against all evidence? Because we have confused tactical power with strategic effect. Air power is an undeniably potent tool. It can degrade an enemy's military. It can destroy their economy. It can enforce a no-fly zone and protect troops on the ground. It can shape the battlefield and impose immense costs. It is a sledgehammer. But a sledgehammer cannot build a house. It cannot write a constitution. And it cannot kill an idea. What air power cannot do alone is fundamentally change the political will of a nation determined to resist. It cannot install a new form of government. It cannot eradicate an ideology. That work is slow, messy, political, and it often requires boots on the ground. The failure is not just about bombs. The failure is about belief. We choose to believe in the myth of the clean air war because the alternative, the reality of protracted, bloody, complex conflict is too awful to contemplate. The belief in air power as a political solution isn't just a strategic error. It's a systemic delusion, a promise made by military-industrial complexes to politicians, and by politicians to a public, that victory can be achieved without sacrifice. It allows us to fight wars that exist only on a spreadsheet, where enemy will is just another variable to be solved. For the men who die when that spreadsheet is proven wrong, the distinction means little. This dangerous illusion isn't just a failure of strategy. It's a failure of data. A failure to see the enemy as they are, not as our models want them to be. But what happens when military leaders know their models are wrong? When they know the numbers are a lie but are forced to continue the charade, fabricating success out of devastating failure? In Vietnam, this led to one of the most chilling deceptions of the 20th century. Click here for our deep dive on the body count lie and see how the pressure to show progress created a war that was fought and lost entirely on paper long before it was lost on the ground. Understand that, and you'll understand the true cost of manufactured victory.